And we're live. We're live.
Yes. Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl. Good morning, Brain. And good mornings to everyone who is watching this live and will watch us recorded. Welcome to Moreness-Culture.
Yes,
Welcome to
yes,
the space where you
yes.
can be yourself and be more than yourself. It's a possibility. Open space is a possibility.
Repeat that, please. Repeat that, please.
Yes.
Welcome to the space where you can be
yourself and you can be more than yourself.
There you go. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely
Because
fantastic.
free comes from freedom, and this is the free space we have to provide and share opportunities and possibilities. Every time when we see space, universe is just giving us this opportunity. We can paint it as like it's a blank canvas. You can paint it as you want. It is something freely available. So this is the space where you can be yourself, and also you can be more than your expected self. This is what is happening with me every single day, and this is what is happening with Syl also. Of course, Syl's expectations are different from himself. Okay, I know that with my personal understanding. I can say that his expectations and idea of expectation is completely different to conventional mindset. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm understanding. I'm just learning this. Now I'm in the process. Anyway, today's thought, while Syl is busy sharing. Syl, are you still busy or?
Yes. Well, almost ready. I mean, one or two more seconds here.
Okay. And hopefully we'll be live on Instagram also today.
We are already. Yes. No.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So welcome to Instagram also, and we are using multiple platforms. You can of course find all the contents on Substack. We are on YouTube and we are on TikTok and we are on Instagram and Facebook. So many platforms, and soon you will see us, of course, on different platforms. Day before yesterday, like on when? Sorry.
Just say on Instagram, IG there, we have Irina Isabella that joined us. So hello, Irina.
Yes, welcome, Isabella. Welcome to Moreness-Culture. Welcome to the open, free space where you can be yourself and also you can be more, always, because there is always more, and this is what Moreness-Culture is all about. Anyway, yesterday we both were on the celebrity interviewer Jill Nicolini's podcast, and we were there together, and Syl shared so much wonderful stuff there. Okay. It was a bit, okay, we were not on time. Okay. So it was a bit of, you can say that, yes, just gathering things up. But Syl shared such wonderful stuff there. So potent, so valuable. It was about impeccability. And of course, it was about moreness, and it was about so many other things. And whenever it comes to moreness, it's a confusion in, of course, in everyone's mind. What is moreness? What actually it means by moreness? And Syl shared such a wonderful definition and explanation about that. For me, it is moreness, again, capital M moreness, in this context, it's about going beyond your expectations. It can be about yourself, it can be about situation, it can be about universe. We assume that we understand that how the world is working. We assume that this is what universe is for me, because everything is about personal context. But even your personal context will change after understanding, at least a bit for me, that what moreness is. And as we all say, that universe or the world around us is a projection of our inner thoughts and our subconscious mind. When we attune our subconscious mind with moreness, imagine how it will project out in the universe. How much it is going to be more and more and more. This is what is happening with me. This is what is happening with other people. I'm not the only one here. Because it is directly connected to the very core and the soul of human mind and, of course, human being. We belong to, of course, the moreness. If we look at the idea of different ideologies, we say that, okay, oh, we were in the heaven and we came. What heaven is? Moreness.
What
Actually,
is heaven
moreness.
now?
Yeah. What is heaven? Okay, pardon me for my grammar. Okay, and then
Oh,
you
it's
guys
not
are
a
so
big deal.
wonderful.
It's just cute. Just
Yeah,
reflex
but
for me to say something.
no, thank you so much. I really
uh,
appreciate that.
well, I
So
love that.
because it is so innate, and I'm trying to, but it
Yeah,
just comes out in that way, without
yeah,
me being aware. Subconscious thing now, very programmed, or habits,
right.
habits, habits, habits.
Habit.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes, to learn to listen to yourself is a profound habit. It's
oh
difficult.
yes, difficult, yes.
Difficult. Yeah.
So, what is heaven? When I was understanding from the religious context, also, okay, I have some understanding about Hinduism also. They have the concept of heaven also. Muslims also have the concept. Christians also have the concept of heaven.
Yeah.
And if we really go into detail, what it is, moreness.
Yeah.
Moreness.
Exactly.
That's it. That's it.
Exactly.
And when we
Yep.
can,
Yep.
we can bring moreness or heaven on this earth, in this world, by
Yeah.
understanding and by attuning with the Moreness-Culture. We can have that right here. Not
Exactly.
necessarily on the, like, okay, really
Exactly.
going beyond the limitations. Some limitations, of course, like physically we have, biologically we have some, but still we can enjoy moreness in our mundane life. Yes, this is what I'm experiencing. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me
There
time to
you
share
go.
this. And
Oh, I love it. I
now
love it.
we can get back to what
Yes.
we are going to do again.
Yes.
We
Yes.
are doing,
Oh,
okay, just for the newcomers, we are doing the capital R reading of Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan. And this is what we are busy with. And we are almost at the end of book 1, and soon we will start book 2. And what we are
yes.
doing is, it's a very specific intent. Capital R reading is a process where you read beyond the words, where you read beyond the story, and where you read and connect, or actually to connect with the bigger intent. And
To the
we are,
moreness that's always
yes,
there.
yes.
Even if the
And
moreness isn't intended by the author, we can
yes,
still extract moreness. Yeah.
exactly. And now we are going, with this book specifically, these books, we have a very specific intent. We don't want to just read these books and do the capital R reading, a special reading for them. But we have an intent that we want to connect with Don Juan. We want to connect with
Correct.
his abstract intent also. And by
Yes.
that, okay, I am having such an amazing experiences. I have shared already, but at some point I'm going to share it again. But right now, we will just start doing the capital R reading of Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan.
Yes. Well, we're on the very last one. Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah. Page 102. I have to get there real quick. I'll be there now. 102. And once again, oh, come on. Why isn't it searching? Oh. We'll be there in a second. Let me screen share in the meantime. There we go. I had to reboot the computer. And when it does that, it resets the page, so. But the control F isn't searching, which is rather weird. There it is. All right. Okay. No, that's a different page 102. As you see, this is a file of all the books. So it's the first page 102. There we go. All right, let's get a little bigger. There we go. There we go. There's little things to just organize that take time, Just amazing. And oh. Here we go. The conceptual order. So we skipped just a little bit there, not much, but just more or less the same stuff. He was talking about the corroboration and all that. So now we get to his last unit here. And let's see what he has to say. Will you read, please, Beena? Beena, where'd you go?
Sorry, I'm
Oh,
just
you're muted.
busy responding to on
Oh,
YouTube.
okay. Oh, on YouTube. All right. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. All right. The conceptual order, the apprentice. The apprentice was the last unit of the conceptual order. The apprentice was in his own right the unit that brought Don Juan's teachings into focus. For he had to accept, Carlos, man, why do you have to be so inadvertently sexist, Just he. For they had to accept the totality of the special consensus given on the component elements of all the states of non-ordinary reality and all the special states of ordinary reality. Before a special consensus could become a meaningful concept. All right, so I want to just comment here. Beena was talking about extracting or connecting to moreness that may not be there. So yeah, the moreness is just in that word he. Yeah. And it starts off with the apprentice. The apprentice was in their own right. Now, the moreness for us is noticing that Carlos is saying this. So often we just, especially with this type of inadvertent sexism, right? It's not that he's deliberately sexist and he's not anti-woman or whatever. It's just a habit that has come into play. Right? Like Beena was talking about the habit of her grammar. So the moreness for us is to notice that and to be able to change it on the fly, right? To read it as neutral. That's a practice, that's a skill, that's an awareness. So that's moreness for us, that we have the awareness to notice it in the first place and not to perpetuate this default habit that makes for this imbalance, right? That's why I object to it. I don't want to read what is written here because I'm now perpetuating the default, which is an inadvertency, right? So let's read again. The apprentice was in their own right the unit that brought Don Juan's teachings into focus. For they had to accept the totality of the special consensus given on the component elements of all the states of non-ordinary reality and all the special states of ordinary reality before special consensus could become a meaningful concept. But special consensus, by force of being concerned with the actions and elements perceived in non-ordinary reality, entailed a peculiar order of conceptualization, an order that brought such perceived actions and elements into accordance with corroboration of the rule. Therefore, the acceptance of special consensus meant for me, as the apprentice, the adoption of a certain point of view validated by the totality of Don Juan's teachings. That is, it meant my entrance into a conceptual level, a level comprising an order of conceptualization that would render the teachings understandable in their own terms. I have called it the conceptual order because it was the order that gave meaning to the unordinary phenomena that formed Don Juan's knowledge. It was the matrix of meaning in which all individual concepts brought out in his teachings were embedded. Now, our moreness here. Carlos is writing a whole lot of words here, and man, it's kind of hard, heavy reading because he's not that clear about what he's doing. He's saying it, but he's still not really clear. And well, he's got the other agenda of needing to make it sound important because this is part of his thesis, his doctoral thesis in anthropology. But really, he's saying I needed to learn to think differently. Yeah, to conceive differently. If he's got a bunch of abstract concepts that take care of any eventuality, does it need to build a separate conceptual order for unordinary reality? You can then use the same one. Appropriateness applies in alternate reality, in any alternate reality you can think of. Yeah? So does impeccability. And this is the power, the magic, the wonder, and the awesome of the language of conceptionality, which is the language of Moreness-Culture. Yeah? Every culture has its language. Some cultures have multiple languages. Yeah, part of the culture. Pakistani culture, part of it is multiple languages. Swiss culture, the average Swiss person speaks 3 languages, right? German, French, and Italian, because Switzerland has those three parts inside Switzerland. There's, the south is Italian, and the west is French, and the north is German. And north and east is German. So it's part of that. Yeah, it's part of that culture that they speak all three languages. They probably speak English as well, because there's a lot of international stuff in Switzerland, right? With the banking and United Nations and stuff like that. All right. So my point is that to understand the culture, you need to know the language, at least one of them or some of them, right? Like to really get into Swiss culture, you probably need to know all three of those languages. Yeah. Because they affect how we think and how we talk. Now, it's not entirely critical, but certainly if you want to really get inside, for instance, well, in Swiss culture, the languages will have overlap. So you wouldn't have to have all three. One will probably do. But like Japanese culture, you want to understand Japanese or Chinese culture or whatever, you really need to know that language, right? Because they have some very unique, specific terms that really make for that. Translations don't always cut it. Yeah. I mean, if you really want to know the culture, you can get it through a translation. It's possible, but then it's a little bit secondhand. At any rate, something like Moreness-Culture, which, many cultures in our world, Japanese culture, Chinese, American, African, whatever, or Ethiopian. I don't like to say African because it makes it sound like Africa is this one place. It's not. Yeah, it's all different countries. So, Ethiopian, Egyptian, whatever, Ugandan, South African, all different. But they all similar in this, that they all follow the superiority paradigm, right? So when you look at it via this abstract concept again, conceptionality of the superiority paradigm, well, you see all the similarities. Yes, there are individual differences, but they don't really make all that much difference in terms of the similarities are so profound. And when it comes to superiority paradigm, they all match. However, Moreness-Culture is from the Moreness paradigm, which is a different paradigm. And therefore, it really is quite something to get to know it. Yeah. Because you cannot extrapolate, you cannot connect, you cannot see the similarities between your culture and the other culture, because, well, they're all, people are into winning. Take pretty much every culture on earth, this is a big deal, or ambition, or status, or pursuit of wealth, fame. Yeah, this is universal. See, in cultures, not everybody pursues that, but as a cultural imperative. Yeah, being good, likewise. Right? So many similarities, but when we come to a different paradigm, now the similarities are not as many. Yes. And you have to be very careful, because a paradigm is like confirmation bias. It's a filter that makes you perceive things in a particular way. Language, likewise, language is a mechanism for applying and implementing that filter, right? Because language, we also think in our language. Yes. Even if we're not thinking very specifically with words, you still think in concepts, and the concepts are part of the language, right? So this really, and you feel according to that as well, right? You think and feel according to shoulds and supposed tos and must be's and all such other inadvertent assimilations, right? And sometimes they are advertent, they are deliberate assimilations, but still. So language really, really affects our reality in a very big way. It affects how the brain works, etc. So it's a very important aspect, especially if you understand the culture, know the language. And particularly if you want to understand the paradigm, understand the abstract language. That's very important. The abstract concepts that comprise that paradigm. Yeah, very important, very important. And that's why the language of conceptionality is the language spoken in Moreness-Culture. And since Moreness-Culture is universal culture, it doesn't matter where you are, what local language you're speaking. Yeah, whether you're speaking Arabic or Swahili, what difference does it make? Doesn't matter. If you are using the language of conceptionality, it applies in any language. Yeah? Very, very powerful. Very, 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 very powerful. It changes the way you think. Now, this is what he's saying here. And I'm saying that the language of conceptionality is exactly set up to deal with this issue for Carlos. He's struggling because he doesn't have the language, and he's creating it sort of, kind of, but he's doing a poor job of it rather. But he is understanding that he needs a different conceptual order to process unordinary reality. But there's the problem, Carlos, that you think it's two completely different things. No, have the same abstract understanding that takes care of both. Now you're in a much better space. Like I said, appropriateness, impeccability, integrity, yes, trust, all of these concepts, they apply in unordinary reality just as much as in ordinary reality. Yeah? Very powerful, very, very powerful. For the process of validating special consensus, see Appendix A. Full academic mode. This reminds me. Just on a little quick aside here. It's part of language of conceptionality. Yes. To go as connected to something that came up yesterday when I said, "Oh, please don't call me an intellectual." And Joseph had a comment about some variation of intellectual that he's happy to be called. For me, I don't care for those labels. Why? Because they limit you. That's why. Yeah. And those type of labels where people say, "I'm a this, I'm a that." Well, it's true, but that's not all you are. Yeah. Beside which, intellectual, it's completely wrong when it applies to me. So that's why I object to it, or correct it when it comes up, right? Because it's a misperception. But regardless, when you start labeling yourself in specific ways like that, you tend to be limiting yourself. Because what people do when they do that, they add a tag that's a definition rather than a conception. In language of conceptionality, one of the key terms is self-conception, not self-description or self-definition. Those tend to lock you in and limit you. I'm a this, I'm a that. Self-conception says, I'm a process. I'm a path. Yeah. I'm change, I'm development, I'm growth. All of those are open-ended. Descriptions and labels closed. They lock you in. Yeah. And moreness, how can we lock ourselves in? Because we know there's always more. Right, Beena?
Yes.
Beena?
Yes.
So we can't lock ourselves in because we know there's more, right?
Exactly.
Right? Joseph puts a picture there. I can't see it too well. What does it say? Can you see what it says on the picture? It's an elephant with something on its back. I'm here, it says. Oh, I'm here. Ha, brilliant. Hello, Joseph. Brilliant. Yeah, I was just commenting on something that you stimulated in your mind, when you reacted to my comment about don't call me an intellectual. I just generally, as part of Way of Impeccability, is a whole module on self-conception. It is absolutely crucial and essential if we wish to grow and learn and develop and be more than what we are, to change our self-conception into an appropriate self-conception, one that is open-ended, one that takes care of where you're at. For instance, I know of somebody whose self-conception is power learner. Yeah? See, it's open. What is a power learner? It's not closed, it's not tight, it's not definition. A power learner, you learn and you will increase your understanding, your awareness, your knowledge, your moreness, your attention, your trust, your abilities, etc. Right? All of that is in there. It's open-ended. And this is a huge deal. Right. Okay. So Joseph says, I'm only comfortable being locked in because I don't take it serious. I'm not serious about the labels. Yeah. And that's really crucial. And that's why mostly it sort of works. But Joseph, we have to be really careful. Inadvertent assimilation is incredibly powerful. Right? Even though we don't take things seriously, they still sit in us there in the background. They have an influence. They have an effect. Yeah. It's like, all right, you pick up a mild virus, whether in person or on your computer. Either way, you still carry on and you're okay. It's mild and you at maybe 98% efficiency. It's still less than 100. Right? Now, one of them doesn't matter, but they start to accumulate over time. And at some point, they do start to make a difference, right? So it matters. It really does matter. I mean, I appreciate what you say, and it's really cool. I'm just saying, as a note of caution, to be aware that, something that doesn't affect us because it's minute, that doesn't mean it won't affect you if those minutiae accumulate, right? So to be aware of the accumulation of minutiae is very, very important, because this not only applies physically, as in with dust, for instance, or garbage, yeah, but it applies psychologically as well. Yeah, we accumulate dust and garbage inside us, and one or two little pieces, one little speck of dust, big deal, right? Even a few of them, so what? But they add up, and then it does make a difference. Yeah, or like garbage. So it's important. It's very, very important to pay attention to this accumulation of minutiae. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And also, it's yes, the other part of it, at least from a way of impeccability point of view. Now, look, way of impeccability is not saying, hey, you must follow way of impeccability. No, never, never. Nothing I ever say and do is a must to anybody else. I don't see that anybody has that ability, or it's appropriate for anybody to do that. It's just madness. How can I say what you must do? Only you can know that, right? However, within way of impeccability, should somebody say, hey, I want this. And why do you want way of impeccability? Because it is a toolbox for self-change and life change, right? So it's tools. It's not a belief system. It's not an ideology. It's a set of tools. And like self-conception, see, when you understand self-conception, it's a tool. Now, you may not have a negative from those particular labels because you don't take them serious. At the same time, Joseph, you don't necessarily have the positive that comes from having a self-conception that adds to you, that encourages you, that opens you up, and that stimulates you, that brings things into your awareness. When we have a particular self-conception, our brain starts noticing things, it starts paying attention to things, it starts processing things in a different way. And now we're adding a massive moreness to us because we've got a tool that's opened up the brain. Self-conception is that tool, not only in terms of noticing and paying attention, but also how we process what comes into us. Yeah? When we have an appropriate self-conception, it enables processing on a whole different scale. Right? And so now the things that before just came and sort of bounced or didn't really make a difference, well, suddenly they're making a difference to us. And we shift, we change, we add. So self-conception, incredibly powerful. Now, not everybody wants to change, right? I'm saying this is now not for you necessarily, Joseph. I don't know, how much that's of issue to you. But should you want to live differently, to change, to grow, to connect to moreness, etc., then an appropriate self-conception is very important. Now, I mean, there's a whole a session. It's a big focus in way of impeccability. I'm just touching on the concept here, not necessarily the process of it, right? Of acquiring this. Very, very powerful. Very powerful, that. Yeah. Call me that, don't call me that, call me something else. I know any label is humor is important to me as using death as an advisor. Exactly. It's my predilection to see the world as folly. Absolutely. So wherever I talk about me being a part of the intelligentsia, a good part of that is my sense of humor. Yes, I love that, Joseph. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
You know what?
And
Just
then,
a side
yeah,
note, sir, that
yes.
term intelligentsia. I'm hearing this term very often in our news nowadays,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people do talking about
It's
the
become
agency,
popular, yeah.
the agency here, that intelligentsia, because if they are okay establishment, in other words, and they are
Yeah.
in talk, they are in news and everywhere.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
like, okay, yes, Joseph, I can assume you being there and putting everything on you.
Yeah. Right, right.
Whatever is happening, okay,
Yeah.
intelligence, yeah.
Right, Joseph. For me, and I'm talking about Moreness-Culture, right? I'm coming from this perspective. So again, I never say anything to say it applies to you. I'm sharing what is applying within this whole great big system that I've developed, right? Moreness-Culture, way of impeccability, capital H hearing, Nobelia-Living, all of this. within that context, which is geared towards those for whom learning and growing is an imperative, a passion, a desire, a thirst, a hunger, right? And they love it. It's a joy, right? That's who this is for, right? That's what's been my whole life. Now, it's an if that's your passion, if, big if, right? If that's your passion, and nothing says it must be. Everybody's different. And part of Way of Impeccability is the profound respect for individual paths, right? It's inherent in the entire understanding that nobody can tell you what to do. It's built into Way of Impeccability. That's why nowhere in Way of Impeccability does it ever say you must do this, you must do that. Never. No, it says, here are the tools for you to do this should you choose. That's it. Right? You can get the tools and do nothing with them if you choose. That's up to you, right? But it's just tools. But should you wish to be more open and grow and learn, then paying acute, fine attention to your self-conception has profound consequences and results. It makes a huge difference. Yes, we have, like you said, sense of humor. But as I was saying earlier, we have to be careful of inadvertency, because we don't suffer negative, but we also are not connecting to the vast amount of positive that's possible, right? So, and just I can pull up a little bit just to give some ideas. One of the self-conceptions that I utilize as an example throughout Way of Impeccability is the self-conception of a spirit warrior. Not spiritual warrior, but spirit warrior. And I make a big distinction between the two. All right. So you're a warrior for spirit. You're a warrior of spirit. Yes, that's it. And what are you doing? You're looking to make every effort as a warrior, right? A warrior being impeccable, a warrior that takes no chances, a warrior that's thorough, a warrior, all those qualities of warrior, all the positive qualities, right? You can say noble warrior. And I meant to talk about this before and I never got there. So actually, let me stop the screen share here and go and point out this. So the spirit warrior, let me talk about the warrior part first. And let's look at it from the Moreness-Culture point of view. And let's go to the very extreme, actually, which is not necessarily applying in Way of Impeccability, but let's go to the full extreme and see how Nobelia regards warriors. And they have. It's part of your training as a new noble. And what do they mean by a warrior? First of all, they see warrior as basically in the same conception as you will say a sewage cleaner. A necessary, unpleasant, horrible job that somebody has to do. Yes? And they are very careful of not giving warrior a glory image. Yes? So warrior in Nobelia culture is an unglorious term. Much like you'd say, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm the guy. I forget there's a special name in medieval times, right? Where they had, the toilets, just a hole in a pipe, and would go down through the castle, multiple floors and stories. But it was somebody's job to crawl through those pipes and clear them out on a regular basis, because they didn't have the same, running water and all that, to make it flow cool, right? And those people, they just ended up smelling all the time, and they were essentially outcasts in societies, right? In a society. And it's a special name for it. I know, you can maybe look it up and Google it. But warrior is the same in Nobelia culture, has the same connotation out of this. It's a job you respect, but you don't also want to do, and there's no glory in it. This is very key, because the moment you start glorifying warriorness, you also inadvertently start to glorify the use of violence. Now, you see, it goes hand in hand. It can't be helped. Yeah. Yes. And of course, when you are talking about, especially when you're talking about entry-level warriors, right? They don't go to any infantry or marine or boot camp, right? And look at the average awareness there. It's not an acute, decisive awareness that has discernment and understanding. It hasn't developed yet, and might never develop, or it may, but it hasn't then yet. So most of the time, the average recruit is simply absorbing and taking in and assimilating things, and they're just going along with it. And well, if to be a warrior is a matter of honor, well, what does a warrior do? A warrior uses violence, extreme violence. See, and now that becomes glorious by association. This is the way the brain works. So, of course, on Nobelia, they're extremely sophisticated and they understand the psychology. So, no. So they make a point to understand if you go around, okay, you're a warrior. It's like, thank you for your service. My commiserations, my condolences, or whatever. Maybe not those words exactly, but you have empathy for somebody doing this job. It's not a glorious job, it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. Now, let's go into the finer points of being a warrior. First of all, training to be a warrior. I mean, the specificness of now a warrior in Nobelia culture. And it's a long story how they do this. It's a whole book on its own, basically, by the way, in the lost continent or the secret continent, the hidden continent. Anyway, they train very extensively to do this. However, their first point, your first job, your first priority as a warrior is to never use violence. Really? Oh, wow, isn't that what a warrior? No. As a warrior, that is part of your tools, but it is the last use tool. They look to resolve conflict through every other means except violence. This is your first priority. So a warrior's goal is peace, and they look to implement peace. This is their objective.
Okay, I have a question. They can use force, but not violence, yes?
Correct. Well, that's a great distinction. Yes. Okay. They were exactly force, but not violence. Yes, because you can separate out the two. For instance, I mean, look at you see this so many times in America. Somebody's got a gun in their hand and they're standing there, and then all the police come. Somebody who's like bent out of shape and they're ranting and raving and waving the gun around. Yeah, and then what happens next thing? All the police surround him and they end up shooting the guy.
Yes.
Violence, not force. Come on, you know about tranquilizers. Now, go to the nature reserve industry and say, oh, you know what? We need a nice sable antelope in our nature reserve over here. We don't have any. Could we buy one from you, or a pair, or a whole little herd? And you got plenty. And how do they capture those wild animals? They got those massive, dangerous horns, lions, whatever, right? If you can capture dangerous animals without violence, yeah?
Yes.
You can do the same with people, right? So I'm going to come to you. I'm going to come to you in a moment, Joseph. I want to finish my explanation about the noble warrior, but they don't call it that because now you're adding a positive connotation to it, right? So it's the warriors of Nobelia, not noble warriors, but there is nobility involved, because to say I am able to use force and therefore violence, but I choose not to do so. This is a most extremely noble action. Why? Because force and violence are easy options. Take again our thing with the police force, right? Okay, you can use naps and tranquilizers, but you risk getting shot by the guy. You got to talk him through. It takes time, and you've got to have that, right? You may sit there talking to the guy for 3, 4, 5, 8 hours, and now you've got 20 policemen tied up into this whole thing. Yeah, see what I mean? It's a great extreme effort. The easy thing is just shoot him and stun, and let's move on. And it's terrible. When you have force and violence as your option, because it's the easiest option, typically, you default to that as a matter of habit. Look at parents who get into the habit of smacking their children. How many smacks do you get that are not deserved simply because your parent was too lazy? Right? Not in a direct way, but inadvertently, they never just thought to explain, go into details, give you a bit. That takes effort. Just give you a smack and end of story. Not effective. Yes, it may be in a small sense effective, but in the bigger picture, not at all. Right? Because if you were doing something that you shouldn't do, it's because of lack of awareness, lack of understanding. It's a failure of communication from the parents. To force it by violence, you're not making understanding. You're just now forcing obedience, which is not a very healthy thing to do for your children. Right? So this is why on Nobelia, the warriors, they do absolutely everything. I mean, their first priority is to use strategy. They go so extreme that they look and anticipate and extrapolate and see problems before they arise. Yeah, in the culture in general. Now, on Nobelia, this is not an issue, but they are utilized much as the diplomacy corps is. They are utilized in the agglomeration, right? As specially trained, or the new nobility will train the warriors that are used in the space force, the agglomeration law enforcement, right? And as such, this is like, again, it's a job that the general public, because we're talking about centuries into the future, have come to see as much like a sewage worker, right? Or a abattoir worker, right? A very unpleasant job, but hey, somebody got to do it. Yeah, and those people are not admired, they're not glorified, because it's a horrible thing that you're doing, right? So it's very important to change that. So this takes a great spirit, a great noble spirit, to do something that's regarded as an ugly, dirty job. Yeah, takes a lot, And anyway, and within this, their first priority, and as on the whole, they're looking to anticipate problems, foresee problems, prevent them from happening. So they pay attention to education and all this. But when you actually come to problems, their first choice is on the field, right there in the moment. Strategy, alternative, to resolve things peacefully. First priority, right? So very almost never, ever do they actually need to use force, and never will they use violence, as Beena makes the distinction. Yeah, very, very powerful, very, very powerful. So spirit warrior is a good term, as accurate as everything else. Absurdity, humor, most have in place in any cosmology system. It's a counterweight to earnestness, the way I see it. And both have their time as appropriate to you or the situation, not necessarily appropriate to the immediate environment or people. Yes. Now, remember I said spirit warrior is a term I use as a starting base default. Whether you want to use it or not, it's simply to give an example, and I go into detail in Way of Impeccability on how this term has come about, why, etc. To give an example for then the end of the session, your task as a participant is to create your own self-conception or multiple self-conceptions. Yeah? So this is, again, understand it in the full context, right? It's not a recommendation, it's an example. The fact you think so deeply about each aspect of your cosmology is an intellectual way of going through life. No, Joseph, no. I'm really emphasizing this because this is a very easy misunderstanding to make about me and to make about participants of Wave, or not participants, but appliers, implementers of Way of Impeccability. It's about practicality, Joseph. It's about practicality. The thinking is there to do, it's just a preparation. The end of the thinking is application, living, changing, being different. Then you throw away all the thinking. Right? Intellectual is all about the thinking. That's why I object to this term and why I point out the difference. Intellectual is just about the thinking. It's getting immersed in the thinking. Right? In the way you write it there, right? It's like, well, what's the point of it? Does it really make a difference? In the way you're sharing, no, it doesn't make any difference. But in the way, in way of impeccability, application and implementation makes all the difference, because every single thing in this entire cosmology is about application, practicality. Without application, it's all meaningless. I say this over and over and over and over again, right, Joseph? So this thinking deeply isn't about thinking deeply. It's about application. It is to get to cancel out all the dead ends, to say, okay, and to get to a point of saying, this is what I wish to apply. This is how I'm going to apply. This is how I can apply it. And these are the tools, the mechanisms, the neededness, right? I've sorted out. Understanding, when you come to true capital U understanding, that is actually application right there for the most part. Yeah? Take my whole point about being a warrior in the agglomeration on Nobelia, right? When you really understand, like I said, that point, and it really grabbed Beena, when I said this point about violence being the easiest way, immediately Beena clicked. And, I already know from knowing her, right? And the points fell into place. Okay. So that understanding becomes an application. Should, Beena be in a situation where she could, she's looking after children, and it's part of the culture that you can give them a smack if needed. Beena would not, because she would say, well, am I defaulting to the easiest option, or is this the last resort only option? Did I even try any other means? See, it made a difference to her, and in the application of how she would behave in a situation like that, the understanding which came as a result of the thinking, right? Understanding is the end goal, and then that is the goal of the thinking, and then you get application. When you are able to really, really apply, you just do. Thinking isn't there. Yeah? I don't have to think when I ride my bicycle. I was thinking when I learned to ride the bicycle. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
But see,
And
now
so what
riding
you
a
were
bicycle.
sharing, yes.
Go ahead. I can make the point about riding the bicycle. And for me, riding
Yeah.
the bicycle is also all about understanding. I understand the gyroscopic effect. If you understand the gyroscopic effect, then there's no thinking involved with the bicycle. You know what's needed. You need to get the wheel to spin past a certain speed, and it will automatically balance the bicycle. And there you go. Understanding. See, so that's why I use that riding the bicycle analogy, because when you really take it all the way, understanding the gyroscopic effect, which is a spinning wheel balances itself. There you go. Nothing else you need to know. Just go and do it. Right? Very powerful.
Yes.
Very powerful.
Yes. I was just saying that this is very interesting because Joseph, when you just bring this point about thinking, and of course, well, mostly this is the impression because we do a lot of thinking. But there is an assumption about that. Okay, if you are doing thinking, then you are not implementing, and you will, or you just use all your energies and time into that, which is, of course, okay. People will not understand until they actually just be part of it. Anyway, why I was like really excited about, because before coming here today, when Sir woke up, and then I called him, and then we were doing other things, and before doing that, Sir just said, Beena, I was just thinking about how many ways have you actually change and transform? And one of the things he mentioned that you are becoming, or you are now very brave and courageous.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yes.
oh, me? And he says, oh, yes,
So.
of course, sir, I'm talking about. So, and when he explained that, of course, it was about me. I must know and understand it before anyone else. But why I was not, it was not in the forefront of my consciousness. Of course, my subconscious would be aware, otherwise I would not be. And then he mentioned few things that, okay, by this, by this, by this. And I said, I realized that, yes, I am. But why I was not able to notice it? Because it became so innate to me that it was just become part of my actions, my responses, and my thought process, that it becomes so natural to me that I was not even feeling any change, or like some drastic change, amazing dramatic thing just suddenly happened. No, it gets so much into my system that even I was not noticing it. But of course, as an observer, still observe that timidness was part of your being, Beena,
Gone.
and now
It's gone.
not. Yes, and I was like, wow, okay. And then I start, of course, I was not just accepting this idea that because Phil says that. Okay, if the courtesy is not in this context, we never do that. Okay, in courtesy, we know. In courtesy, we do a lot of other things for the friends, but not this one.
Correct.
So
Capital
I was
diplomacy,
thinking about,
right?
oh, I was just thinking about that. And before accepting this idea that, yes, do I really become courageous and brave than before? And I realized that yes, okay, in my expression. The first thing I noticed was in my expression. My father was super adamant person, and for me, sometimes I was when I was hearing the stories about him, I was like, wow, Baba was really rude in so many ways
But he
because that
wasn't.
was
He
my
was never. He was never rude,
oh,
right?
he was never been. And people
No.
just in love with him. Still, they are in love after decades of that. But still, they love him. Whenever they talk about him, it's so much appreciation, and of course, sometimes admiration and all that. And it was really surprising for me. A person who is just saying things right on your face, and still you just love him. But he was not being rude. He was adamant, and I was not able to
No.
understand the difference. Same with me
Right.
when Syl was saying that the timidness was part of my being before, and now it is no more. I was not paying attention to that how much I have been changed because the change was innate. It was not superficial. It was not artificial. It was not external. It was internal, and it really changes
Right.
my whole being. So that's why
Exactly.
I was not even noticing because what I was observing is myself, just myself. How many
Yeah.
changes happen is was not in my understanding, in my consciousness at the time. And I realized that so many things in my life has been changed. My responses, my choices, my actions,
Yeah.
they are shifted from being nice, people pleaser, or timid person to a person who shares and love the honesty of sharing.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that and how it happened. It was being really thinking it through to the end. I was doing
Exactly.
that, and I'm still in process, of course. But I was just doing that. And once you do that, once you get into that, and with the intent of implementing it in every aspect of your life, this is the honesty. Okay, this is the demand of this. When I was
Yeah.
thinking about something that like it was a very simple thing in the beginning, so mention that Beena, why do you laugh and chuckle after sharing anything? Okay, you share such a profound
Laugh and
that
chuckle apologetically.
yes, after that. And I realized that yes, I'm doing this because subconsciously in my mind it was too big and I don't want to offend people or just overwhelm them.
Exactly.
My ego,
Exactly.
it was my ego. Of course, I was not just taking it
Yeah.
as a politeness, but it was not. It was my
Yeah.
ego that I was assuming on their behalf. I
Yeah.
realized and I changed it immediately.
Yeah.
So it was not just a thought. No, oh yes, it is different. No, it was an action. An action required.
Yeah.
That action was required, and
Yeah.
from that moment till now, of course, it is going to be. I hope that it is going to be always like that. Whenever I understand something, I do try my level best to implement in every aspect of my life.
Have
This is
to.
way of
Have to.
impeccability.
Have
Otherwise,
to.
there is no
Yes.
no no learning there. If I'm not
Exactly.
applying, if I'm not changing, if my
Exactly.
changes are not tangible, they are not
Exactly.
practical, if I cannot see and other people
Right.
cannot observe that,
Right.
it's all
Right.
meaningless, useless.
Where's the value and where's the usefulness?
Yes.
Now, this is the difference between what I do, Joseph, and what is generally done. Now, ADU, you've heard me speaking, mention this many times, right? Awareness, discernment, and understanding. Now, look how it applies here. Plus, the language of conceptionality and why it matters. See, Joseph, you using this term intellectual and intellectualizing. And yes, what I do has similarities to intellectual and intellectualizing. But because this term is in your mind, right, it affects how you perceive what I'm doing. You don't notice that I do a lot more than what intellectuals do. They don't go that extra step to application. They don't go that extra step to say, where's the value? Where's the usefulness? And once they don't go to application, and so they don't end up throwing away all of the intellectualizing. It's just a tool, right? That is the point and purpose for them, not for me. It may seem that way if you look at it through the lens of intellectualizing. That's why I'm very adamant about, please do not call me an intellectual, because I am not. No matter how much it may look that way, the actual difference is vast, because every single thing that I do and share is geared towards application, which is getting real, actual value and usefulness. You'll see in my writing, I capitalize value and usefulness when I write it in this context. Always, because they are part of my dictionary of power. Yes, intellectual and intellectualizing is not in the dictionary of power. It's not an objective, it's not a goal, it's not a complement, because they are hollow, dead-end activities. They don't get you anywhere. It's all just ego-boosting superiority. Look how clever I am. That's the agenda. It's not to actually get to real, true understanding, because when you get to real, true understanding, like our Beena was sharing now, and I shared earlier, that understanding automatically leads to some sort of application. Real value, real usefulness. I know I may sound like an intellectual, but that's only if you have that lens on. If you remove that lens and say, oh, wait a second, I'm about practicality. What is all this talking leading to? Listen to where I end. Listen to the application. Then we'll start to see a whole different way. And this is why the language of conceptionality is so crucial, because our default language, like for instance, Joseph, you're using a default perception of intellectual. Somebody who talks a lot about ideas and that, oh, intellectual. Right? In the old days, they probably call him a philosopher. Yeah. But in the very old days, philosophy was about application, changing your life, changing how you lived. In that sense, but whenever this point comes up, intellectual, well, it used to be philosopher, or also sometimes philosopher. It was, oh, you're a philosopher. I don't know. I'm a practical philosopher. I'm a practitioner, in other words, which is a very different thing to what we think of as a philosopher, which is just a different kind of an intellectual, right? It's just intellectualizing about deeper issues. Yeah. So this is a big point. It's a big point, because to understand the difference between me and an intellectual is to really see what I'm about. It makes a massive difference, right? Because if you just listen to me as intellectual, I'm just interesting. Or potentially so. But if you listen to me as a practical applier, implementer, looking for real value and real usefulness, holy crikey, there's so much of value here, so much to actually use, so much that makes a real capital D difference. Like that point about violence. Yeah, being the easy way. That makes a difference. You understand that, oh, okay, I've been guilty of that. Yeah. And now we can extend that, take it deeper, right? And not just violence, but negativity. Yeah, it's easier. That's why nobility takes a lot of extra effort, because just the way the system is set up, negativity is easier. Why? Because the universe has set things up to say, learn, grow. If you're doing things because they're the easy way, well, that's understandable. That doesn't necessarily mean you believe it's right. You're just doing it because it's easy. So the universe has set things up where to be negative and violence, that's easy. But to do the things that really matter, that you have to do out of choice, not because they default to easier. Those things, like nobility, like integrity, like honesty, all more difficult. Right? But that's the only way you're going to know that you're doing it because you really mean to do it. You really intend to do it. You really believe in this. It's really right, because you are making extra effort. That is how you know, and you know it in others also. Right? So it's the part of the magic of the awesome of the universal system. See, it all comes down to practical application again. this understanding. It's not just words. It matters. It matters in our daily lives. It's a very big deal. So I don't mean to give you a hard time, Joseph, but I know I'm saying it just in general, though. What you shared was a magic example of the power of conception and how conception affects our reality. That's why the language of conceptionality opens up a whole new reality. A whole new reality. Yeah, yeah. It's not intellectual, it's practical, Joseph. I'm not intellectualizing it, I'm practicalizing it. It's a very big difference. It may sound intellectual, but intellectual is just words. It's just ideas. I'm saying, yes, the practical difference. This is how it makes a difference. You are perceiving me as somebody who just talks a lot about stuff. You're missing the fact that I'm talking about it's a tool that can be thrown away. It's about how it gets used and applied, how we change, how we are. It's about ways of being and ways of living. Talking is a tool, not an endpoint. Intellectualizing, talking is the endpoint. See? So I'm not coming at anything from an intellectual perspective. I'm not trying to intellectualize things. Look at Carlos in his writing here in the structural analysis. That's intellectualizing, putting it into fancy, complicated, making what you say sound important. This is the process of intellectualizing, making it sound intelligent. I don't care whether I sound intelligent or not. I'm about getting the point where can you use this? Can it be of value? Can it matter, make a difference in your life? Very different intent, Joseph. Very, very different intent, yeah? Yeah, yeah. I understand you may have a personal perspective of intellectual. That's different. But, you use the term in general English without qualifying earlier that you're using it in a personal sense that's different. So I had to react to the typical English understanding, right? So that's fair enough if you have a different thing. But instead of seeing me as intellectual, how about, let me ask you as a favor, you see me as a practical applier, implementer, somebody who's looking for value and usefulness, to apply it, to be it, to live it, and to understand that all the words, at some point they get thrown away, like the riding the bicycle point. Once you understand, you just do it. Once you know how to ride a bicycle, you just do it. Words aren't a part of it. We wish to get to this. One of my aspirations is to use a term from Don Juan, is to get to a point where we have silent knowledge. All the talking gets thrown away. You can act directly. Beena and I experience this fairly regularly, yes? Where we act directly. Sometimes that acting directly actually applies, actually using words, like when we write poetry or stories. They just come and it's direct. You're not actually thinking about it in the normal way. It's very, very powerful. But if you start to shift your conception of me, to say, oh, so not an intellectual, he made this very clear. And not in any way. He's a practical applier. He's a resolver. He's a figure outer. He's an implementer, right? And the figuring out, right, which is what is perceived as intellectual. This is figuring out or sharing, elucidating. You can think of me as an elucidator, yes, but what am I elucidating? Not just awareness just for the fun of awareness. No, there's always value and usefulness to the awareness or the discernment or the understanding. It's always about application. Always, 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 always about application. Now, that's very, very key, very key. Because, Joseph, the reason I emphasize this so much, if you start to listen with a different filter, you'll actually hear a lot more than what the words in and of themselves say. Yeah. You'll hear the intent, you'll hear the application, you'll hear the connection, you'll hear the understanding. And now it will, where's the value? And you will start to create and connect to the value, right? I'm just pointing it out. And then, of course, the individual needs to connect to it and make it their own. But when we listen to somebody intellectualizing, it's their thing and you just basically observing as an interested party, right? It's a different way of listening. When you're listening for value and usefulness, a whole different way you listen. You're automatically processing it internally. And say, I get it. Okay. And then you see the value. And now you've got the value. It's yours. It's not mine. Intellectualizing, it's all my stuff. When you listen for value and usefulness, And I don't care that it's mine or not mine, it doesn't matter. It sometimes it's useful and important, like when the AI attributed moreness as originating from me. Why does it matter? So that people can understand what moreness is as it is intended to be. Yeah. And somebody else can have a different version of moreness, but this particular one, right, they have to come to the source. So there it matters. But in general, I don't care. I don't need credit. I have no ego. It doesn't make any difference to me. So how we listen through the lens of the conceptions, it changes our perception of reality. This is the key point. And this is how we connect back to Carlos now, right? In this conceptual order, he's trying to say he needs a different conceptual order for unordinary reality. And I'm saying, Carlos, you can have a conceptual order that is universal conceptionality that takes care of any reality, right? But also that conceptual order, how your conceptual order inside your brain, it determines how you perceive reality. And perception of reality is everything. For instance, like I said, if you perceive me as an intellectual, you're only going to get partial value. And in my opinion, very little relative to what is available if you listen to me through the lens of practicality, elucidation, implementation, life change, self-change, ways of being, ways of living. You listen through that lens. Holy crikey. Wow, there's tons of stuff to use. Right, Beena?
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
love this, Joseph. I love this. I love this. You know, what you share, Joseph. You see, I elucidate and come to understanding, but it provides fuel. It's a mechanism. It's leverage. It's stimulation, right? It's very useful, very, very useful. See how, again, what I'm saying to you, I'm not relating to what you're saying intellectually. I'm looking at it from a utilitarian point of view. Yeah, I'm a utilitarian and a realist. Yeah. You know, intellectualizing, it's running around in circles to no end. I can't stand that. Don't waste my time. We need to. I've been in many discussions where people are, and they can just like leave the discussion at any time. Okay, time's up, time to go home, whatever. Or you see it on TV. I know this drives me crazy. The point needs to be resolved. What's the point of your talking? Just listening to your voice. Listen, come on, man. There's no value if you just leave it and you don't finish. You don't come to resolution. No, not me, not me. Never, 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 never. No, there's got to be somebody. Time is precious, Joseph. Time is precious. I've known this as a deep, deep knowing and a pressure on me since I was 11 years old, thinking about death. Yeah, I thought it through to the end. And the end result for me is, how do I apply understanding the power of death? Time is precious. And ever since then, every second of my life, I used to read at least one book a day, despite going to school, doing sports, doing chores, all that stuff. Why? Because I utilized dead time. That's what I called it, dead time. Yeah, like when you go into class, you walk into class and you before the teacher comes, right? Or you're unpacking your books before the teacher starts. That's, I don't know, maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds. I would read. But you add all up those little dead times. It got me to read a book a day at least. So 1 year I read 2 books a day because of that. So time is precious. I always multitasking, almost always in some way, because time is precious, right? So I like to, if something like, when you do, sometimes you have to wait for the thing to come to give a result. In that waiting time, I do something else. Oh, very powerful, very, very powerful stuff. So yeah, utilitarian and utilizer and somebody who understands the preciousness of time. Right? Intellectualizing, waste of time. Sorry, not for me, not for me. But it's Joseph. I don't take it as offensive or bothersome. Not at all. Not at all. The only reason I make a point out of it is because you do come regularly, and it's this lens will affect how much value you get from being here. That's why I mention it, right? That's why I mention it. And just to make the general point about how conception affects reality and affects value and usefulness. right? And when we shift those conceptions, they matter. And to come back to where we started, it's about the self-conception, see? That same self-conception, how it affects our perception of the external world, likewise affects our perception of the internal world. And as a, well, to give an example, right? Use this term spirit warrior, right? And many of the participants have come and they involved in work and life and business. And, one participant in particular had been very heavily involved in corporate, right? In corporate. So I said, well, imagine if you walk into a corporate meeting and it's, the typical corporate meeting, you got something that's going on. And you walk in and you've got to share something or do something or whatever, just participate. But you walk in as Joseph. As Joseph, your range of options are let's say X. But walking as a spirit warrior, suddenly your range of options has increased dramatically. See the difference that the self-conception makes? You're not even aware of it, but the moment you start to think, wow, I'm going into this option, this meeting now as a spirit warrior, suddenly your range of options are there's no limit to them. You can do whatever. Right? So the self-conception changes our behavior, our thinking, our mood, our attitude, our feelings, everything is determined by the self-conception. We don't notice it because it's a default and it just runs and we accept it. But when you add an open-ended power conception, suddenly things explode. Yeah. Although I'm guessing, I think Beena might be coming from a more perspective of emotionality. Why? Why would Beena be more emotional than me? Am I not passionate about this point, Joseph?
Yeah, I think that you are too emotional today. Wow, wonderful. Because this is exactly what I was about to say that, okay, Syl, like today you are like really sound so passionate and so emotional about it, which makes sense to me because it is we have to be very scrupulous about the concept and the clarity of it, that because it is connected to directly connected with the intent, what we are doing with the intent, and of course intent is so precious. And yes, I love to be, because this is who I am, of course, Joseph. But today Syl was, I guess that he's more into emotions and of course into passion. This is very, it's an emotional topic, it's a passionate topic about, and this is very good that you actually bring this up, because we need this clarity for everyone thinking. Just let me share something. In my maternal side family, my grandfather, and not my grandfather, but my granny's family, they were jewelers, and they still are. So what is the tradition there, that how they learn to make their goldsmiths, so they how to make jewelry of gold and precious stones. This is what they do. So in the childhood, like okay, boys mostly age of like 7 or 8, they start going to learn that skill. And then what the actual jewelers or goldsmiths, what they do is they don't tell them anything, and they keep going there like for a year or two. And after 2 year or some, I don't know the exact time, because there is no exact time. Whenever the teachers or the person, um, they just give them the gold and say that now make this son, make this thing. They have a typical language for that, very specific. But the main point is that they just automatically they just provide the environment to observe what is being doing there, what they are doing there. They don't tell them that okay, oh, look at this, and okay, now this is how we are going to do that, and no, they just provide the environment there where a person or new boy, okay, a young boy, they will observe them, and they understand that it's all about just observing. And one fine day suddenly you have a gold in your hand, and then you say okay, now let's start. So it is a process where they have chosen this observing. In way of impeccability, in Moreness-Culture, the process is about thinking it through to the end. But this is not the end. The end is now you have gold in your hand, now make a beautiful artifact out of it. This is the thing. This is the real deal. So yes, the process was there. Of course, every single time when I'm thinking, when I learn something like new, oh my God, okay, because okay, the very first one for me, of course, it was about the way of impeccability definition, but the very first new concept for me was having the ability and be comfortable with the awkward silence. I never heard anything like this. Never. And I
There
was
you go.
thinking, what is this? What is this? Being comfortable with the awkward silence. And it was like, oh, wow, okay. And
Life-changing, life-changing,
yes, because
life-changing.
I was the one who gets so awkward in the awkward silence, and I just this was my habit, this was my way of being, that I used to just take the responsibility that I need to resolve this, I need to clear this air, and I okay for that. Sometimes you have to be a lawyer for the one that okay, oh yes, okay, because someone said something. No, 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 that doesn't mean that. Okay, and all that, all sort of nonsense, people pleasing, all sort of unnecessary shoulds. I was taking this burden on myself. I used to. That was
Right.
mind blowing for me when like when Syl says that, okay, oh, being comfortable with the awkward silence. And I was like, how can I be? This is not nice. This is not good. How can I do let it be like this? But that was the short mindset I had. So the process was there. Of course, everybody needs to go through that process. Like, okay, few things get into our subconscious so dramatically that you don't need to think about it. But before that, there is always some observation or thinking about that. And this is a process of way of impeccability also, exactly like nature. We learn some skills and then we start applying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're talking about perception and perception affecting reality. Yeah.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
you hear me saying things which sound intellectual, a perception. Joseph, one of my biggest problems in my whole life has been dealing with my depth of feeling. I feel things most intensely. Why? Because I started off paying attention, observing. That was it. When I started on the path, all right, when I started on that path of awareness at 10 years old, it was all about observing, studying people, understanding them. Right? And the more you understand people's psychology, the more empathetic you are, the more connected you understand what's going on inside them. How do you not feel? Yeah. So I struggled with that. I struggled very much. The one of the power conceptions in my dictionary of power, which is unrelenting positivity. How did I come to that? To live this, not just have it as an intellectual idea, but to live it every single day and apply it. I had to, Joseph. I had to. I was forced to. If I had not implemented and developed and practiced unrelenting positivity, I would have been dead long time ago. I'm not exaggerating. I would have been dead, just overwhelmed of what I felt, and just because the predominance of what's around us is negative. And if I don't have the positivity, the unrelenting positivity to counterbalance that, I would have been dead from depression a long time ago. I've never suffered from depression because I understand the slippery slope of it, and because of unrelenting positivity, and later the development of Moreness-Culture, right? Which is seeing, despite all this, seeing the moreness and seeing the brilliance, the awesome, the genius of it, right? Going all the way, thinking it through to the end. But yes, emotionality or feeling deeply, this is a big deal to me. You know, I felt too much and saw too much, especially in my early life, right? It was something I worked very hard to deal with. To not, again, the solution isn't to feel less, but to process it appropriately. Yeah? Because if you're feeling less, now it's basically being dishonest in my book to say, well, I don't want to feel this, I don't want to feel this, I'm going to ignore this, deny that, whatever. No, it's to process it appropriately. This is unrelenting positivity, awareness, discernment, understanding is how it all comes about. Very, very important. And Joseph, right? Something that is absolutely crucial in way of impeccability. Yeah, it is assumptions. We have to be exquisitely careful. That's why Beena said Syl has a different understanding with expectations, because yes, expectations are so often married to assumptions, and the one is feeding off the other, and we have to be exquisitely careful of this. Exquisitely careful, because we can get into trouble. So Joseph says, strong feelings as I have, as Don Juan states, a consequence or perhaps prerequisite to successful warriorhood. a poetic thing, a poetic life. Yes. I think, if not my first post, one of my very, very first posts on Facebook was live poetically. Live poetically. I made a little meme and a little rhyme and everything, but live poetically. That was the key. Now let's go further on this, Joseph. Let's go further on this, right? Let's look at I'll screen share here in a second. At Way-of-Impeccability, and this is the module following the self-conception, at least the session following the self-conception session, right? And that's module 3, session 1. It's all about self-conception, and we get see the whole module is called Self-Conception and the Dictionary of Power. That's the name of the module. Session 1 is self-conception. Session 2, exemplification of being. Now let's look at this. Let's look at this really carefully. Did I do the screen share right, Beena?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if I chose that specific thing or the whole screen. There we go. All right. So let's look at this, because I want to bring up a very important point here, as you're going to see in a moment. The point and purpose of everything I do is value and usefulness. Where does ultimate value lie? Let's see. Let's see. Perspectives and insights into being a spirit warrior, because the previous module as your self-conception, right? The default one that I'm using as an example is spirit warrior. Now you can say perspectives and insights into being a power learner, or a knowledge explorer, a life adventurer. I mean, those are all different participants. If we go back to the previous one module, the end of the session, we'll see all the examples that, and some of them had multiple lists where they have multiple self-conceptions, which is great, as appropriate, you use, right? But they're all self-conceptions, not self-definitions. Life panic is lack of trust, which is lack of self-trust, which is lack of self-confidence and self-assuredness, resulting in lack of joy, and unempowers us. Let's see, there's something added underneath here. Self-trust based only on our skills and abilities is a fragile self-trust. An important point there on self-trust. Self-trust, self-confidence, and self-assuredness are founded on what? On knowing everything? Obviously not. Then on what? They're all rooted on our reliance on our ability to do, adjust, figure out, be appropriate, be sensible, on our sobriety, our patience, our humility, our energy and ability to learn, on our trust in our intent to goodness, our unrelenting positivity, our perpetual awareness, and of course, our indisputable impeccability. Now, I'm going through this very quickly. This is not the way this is done. Yes? The way this is done is, as a participant, you'll take this and you'll do a repeat back and you'll do a takeaway. And when we go through this, I'll be listening to you share your repeat back of what is said here, and then your takeaway, right? So it's an entirely different mechanism for processing the information. You're going to share how this makes sense to you, first of all, and then you're going to share what value you've extracted from it, what you're going to use as a result of this. Very, very different psychological process, right? And being process, right? It's completely anti-intellectual. Yeah? With all this quote here, with all this, we might say, but sometimes I just don't know, and there's not always time to figure out or learn. Then what? Yeah, then what? That's when we bring out capital T trust. That's what. Because that trust is also a trust in our personal power. The trust will make things work out good, regardless of not knowing how. That's what I was talking about Beena. Beena has developed this trust. And as a result, she's courageous and brave. Yeah. It's a very powerful thing. But I'm going to a point that's coming in a slide or two here. Trusting our personal power, no matter how small it may be, is part of our impeccability. That's Don Juan quote directly, right? We'll get to it later, where he says, yes, a warrior is impeccable when they trust their personal power, no matter how small it may be. Yes, you probably recognize this quote, Joseph, right? Because at root, impeccability is the best use of energy. This is our difference, the difference of our way of being, of living as a spirit warrior. But Just wait. There's a big, not a but an extra and an and an also. Impeccability demands throwing out any petty, inappropriate ego and emotional considerations. Inappropriate and petty ego and emotional considerations. Emotionality is very powerful, but emotionality by implication in the way the word is generally used in English means inappropriate emotions. That's what emotionality means. Yeah. So yes, to feel deeply, to be passionate, that's a very different thing to have emotionality. Yeah. It's very different. Let's see what's underneath this here. And these underneath things typically they've been added afterwards, right? The evolution. The price of holding others responsible for our unhappiness is that we also hold them responsible for our happiness. Wow. We cannot give away our power, not under any circumstances. No. A spirit warrior's righteousness is not based on arrogance, but on their humility and impeccability. Yes. Very important. We have other weapons and shields, those of energy and intent, power, sobriety, trust, awareness. And here's where I was coming to, Joseph. This is for you. And our ultimate power, weapon, and shield, joy. Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Joy. Stars around it, emphasized joy. This is where we're ending. This is the point of it. All of the value and usefulness of way of impeccability, it has to culminate in joy. And I use joy here as a catch-all term for any superlative. Can be bliss, elation, rapture, ecstasy, you name it. Yes, awesomeness, awe, wonder, reverence, all of that, all part of joy. This is the end point. Your integrity, your impeccability, your discipline. What is the best use of your energy? It is to feel joy. But if you're just pursuing joy, like hollow joy, and you're vulnerable, well, then at some point that vulnerability is going to catch up with you, and then your whole world is going to collapse, and then it all goes. So we need joy that is based on substance, right? Which is our impeccability. But the best use of your energy is ultimately joy. Joy that is secure, joy that's not vulnerable. Yeah. Very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Balance in a way. Exactly. Capital B balance. Precisely. That whole slide that I just shared here. Right? One term for this is capital B balance. Capital B balance is a huge term in Dictionary of Power, in the language of conceptionality. Yes? Capital B balance, precisely. This is what attunement is. We haven't gotten to attunement yet. Attunement is capital B balance. And in the module all about attunement, which is the last module of Way of Impeccability, that's where capital B balance comes into it. Yeah. Very, 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 very important. Very, very, very important. Very, very critical. Yeah. Yeah. So to be a spirit warrior, it is to balance spiritual, emotional, physical, intellect, application, discernment, awareness, wonder, awe, mystery, trust, self-trust, implementation, application, making it your own, is to balance all of it, to balance the sophistication of your awareness and your observation with your ability to process it. Everything, the entire act of attunement requires the utmost exquisite balance. And when we look at the Moreness project, and we start to get into the modules and the courses and the programs that follow on after this, we'll see that specifically when we get to the one that comes to nobleness and nobleness of being, it's about exquisiteness of being is the intent, to develop exquisiteness of being. Exquisiteness of being comes from that wonderful, profound, incredible, magical capital B balance. Yes, yes. So again, Joseph, I've mentioned this before. What I do and what I share is not stuff that's just based on nothing. It's not stuff that's based on some idea. No, it's thought through to the end. Also, it's come at from multiple perspectives, multiple, right? And there's depth to it. It's figured out so that you can use it. And when you go to the end of things, you get to joy, you get to capital B balance, you get to attunement, right? I mean, you can have all of this without attunement. All right. So there's more here, but I wanted to get to this point that one of the core goals of Way of Impeccability is joy. To live in attunement is the most absolute, incredible joy possible. To live in capital B balance, to have capital B balance as part of your being. How can this not be joyful? It's automatically so. But again, see, discernment. If you pursue joy just on its own, you could end up with, like I said, vulnerable joy, hollow joy. Yes? Joy without any kind of realness to it, without any power. And the moment that bubble, because then it's a bubble, a very fragile bubble, the moment that bubble gets popped and your worldview collapses, then you've spent all this energy pursuing that one specific thing at the cost of everything else. And that vulnerability leaves you with a collapsed world. And now you can't get back there because everything is a mess. So there's a deep strategy, capital S strategy involved, right? Again, Don Juan is a big one. Strategy was a big deal for me long before I knew Don Juan. I lived all of my childhood with strategy, all of my life, not just, but when I was a child, it was physically very necessary. And I was never bullied because of strategy and awareness and anticipation, extrapolation, etc. Yeah. I use strategy to get out of trouble, and I was a target. I was a target for a lot of reasons.
That's wonderful.
Not
That's
nothing to do with.
wonderful. Yes. Okay. So we are reaching the time. It's almost a
All
time
right.
now.
Oh wow, wow! It
Yes.
went long. It went long. It went long. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Joseph. You know, see, Joseph, your earnestness and sharing, because you share openly, you share honestly. It's stimulating and it brings so much out, and it's such a brilliant thing. It's such a brilliant thing. I mean, just this point of capital B balance is very important. Yeah. Joseph, thank you. I appreciate your compliment there. Still, we come at life with different strengths. I'm saying it appears to me your strength is intellect. It's one of my strengths. But if you really pay attention, you'll see my real strength lies in application. It is to take this intellect that I do possess, yes, and to take it further and to take it all the way to application. There's the real skill, right? If you only see my intellect, you're seeing a small part of me. And that's why I make such a big point about it. Because if you start to see me from this practical application point of view, the pragmatic side, now you're going to see a whole different world. And then you're going to say, oh my God, then you're really going to see value. And not because I'm some wonderful genius, no, but simply because I've spent a lifetime doing this. If you spend a lifetime thinking things through to the end, see, the intellect is the tool. It's what I build with the tool that's more important. See, you're focusing on the tool, which is the intellect. And I appreciate that. Yes, I am skilled at using this tool, but it's what I do with the tool that matters. I have constructed and put together a marvelously wonderful construct that has incredible value, and it doesn't require belief. That's an accomplishment. That is the accomplishment, right? Does not require belief. This is incredible. This is incredible. It's unique as far as I know. Yeah. Doing in a way, acting in a way that is your best, the best way to live your life. Yeah, joy. Exactly, Joseph. But not hollow joy, right? That joy has to be founded on the bedrock, the foundation of impeccability. Same way with trust. Yes, joy and trust in this way are the same thing. Yeah, capital T trust built on impeccability. Capital J joy built on impeccability. Little j joy, little t trust, which little t trust is just wishful thinking and hope and such stuff. Yeah, it's very weak. It's very weak. It's very flawed, and it's very, very vulnerable. Yes, and it's kind of empty. Yeah, little t trust. Same with little j joy. Yeah, I have an expression that is happiness crappiness. Yes, be careful of being happy crappy. It's possible, right? You have to be very careful. So joy, capital J joy. It's why I call it capital J joy, to differentiate and say, why is this so? The dictionary of power. Why is it capital J joy? Why is it capital B balance? What's the difference? There's a massive difference involved. Massive, 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 massive difference. Very important. So I appreciate this so much, Joseph. I always love your comments. I love your comments. They're very stimulating. They're very stimulating. And there's value to it. See, it's not just, oh, I enjoy the stimulation. That's intellectual running around. It doesn't get anywhere. It's the value that results. Yeah, because today I elucidated on a very, very important topic. And if you go back and you listen to say, where's the value? You'll hear tons, because my brain is only focused on value and usefulness. Everything, always. So very big deal. Very big deal. Brilliant. All right, let's just see if there's something. Yes, hello, Casey Parsons joined us.
Oh, yes.
If you're in any way related to Charles Parsons, let me know. I knew a Charles Parsons back in the day when I was a young man doing lots of the stuff. So just in case, you never know. Yeah, he was a good guy. All right, brilliant. And I just love it all.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you so much, Joseph, because you provide this opportunity. Again, there's a value in it to explain it, that, okay, what we, from where we are coming. And of course, I'm including myself as just being privileged here, because of course, Syl was sharing that. But this is what it is. If it was just about thinking and not doing anything, it's useless, it's meaningless. And of course, you will not, or no one can be just, okay, I can say with yes, kind of like surety that, okay, only thinking never lasts. Like it will come, the many thoughts comes and go, and of course you found such wonderful ideas, but without implementation, it's all meaningless. Because in average life, in average person life, how many ideas, brilliant ideas they have? They come and they think, and then of course no application, gone. Nobody knows about them. So even for a musician, they found like, okay, for the first process of creativity is just having an idea, and everything comes from the idea, then thinking. But what they do is they process it, and after that they apply it, and then we have like beautiful art, music, art, culture, everything. So yes, it's all about meaningless. Thank you so much, Syl, for sharing such detail. Yes, again,
without application, it's all meaningless. Yes, yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much, everyone, and whoever joined us and will watch us record it. Please, if you find some value, do click like and subscribe to this channel. And by doing so, you're going to train your online algorithm to bring so much value, more value into your life. Thank you so much. We will see you guys again tomorrow.
Yes. And we may do something a little special tomorrow or on Sunday. Yeah, potentially. Beena, if you can, hopefully I'll see you soon, and then I want to talk to you about what the specialness is. So, little teaser and cliffhanger.
That's good. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, and Norma. If you were here, I hope so.
Oh yes, Norma.
You didn't say hello, but we always assume that you're there somewhere, and you're important to us also. Everybody's important.
Okay.
All right, brilliant. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.